I'm Gina Gingello. I'm Sammy G, Gingello's daughter, and I'm chatting with Stacks.
Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Stacks. I'm your host, Bill Stacks, and today I got Gina Gingello.
We're related to Magadino from Buffalo. After my father passed away, that's when it started coming out that he wasn't just a local figure. He was in connection with Russ Buffalino, was a prominent figure, and he had dealings with people in Boston, Pennsylvania, and was more about, than that I didn't know about.
When you found out all this stuff, what was your reaction?
My reaction was when I watched The Irishman, this picture behind me, I had my TV at that time. My dining room was a living room. I had a living room at one time. And I'm sitting in front of the TV in that corner, looking back at him going, why do these names sound familiar? I watched that movie it's a 3-hour long movie. I watched that movie 3 times because I started hearing more and more names that were familiar. My father was involved. I know you can't see, but this is the logo on the book, the Italian American Civil Rights League. And like Joe Colombo started it, and my father was involved in the chapter 21, Rochester. So he was involved with Joe Colombo.
What about Jimmy Hoffa? You said he was involved with the trucking business.
I never heard that he was involved with Hoffa. My father was with the Teamsters and had the Teamsters Union, but he also, on his own, he created for the non-union truckers, which I found that out maybe about 10 years ago, that people driving the big rigs, a few guys said that to make it fair, even though my father was a Teamster and had his stuff was all union, and my Uncle Tony Gingello was the union president. First it was my Uncle Jimmy Gingello, and then he passed away and my Uncle Tony took over, and then my Uncle Tony was also national with the Teamsters Union, local teams, local and...
After your father was killed, was your family still involved with this type of business?
No, the gambling joints, yes. That was my cousin Tony, his nephew. He had, many gambling joints. And it started going back to after he was murdered, and then they put the message out to the B team that the A team started, coming back into the picture, and they had their joints and stuff like that. It wasn't the same as when my father, Red retired, and then they ended up going back to prison for 25 years, the A team, because they were on for the RICO law.
Oh, so they wrapped them all up in a RICO.
They wrapped it all freaking up, which I still don't understand that when the 2 head guys and police enforcement fabricated all this evidence. And then Mark Williams, a detective, he finally couldn't live with himself anymore. So he came forward, and that's how they got out of prison.
So how did that case transpire? What kind of evidence did they fabricate? When did you hear that he went to prison? Like, tell me about that case.
Well, I went to the trial and everything as many times as I could. He had let me be involved in everything. He had F. Lee Bailey as his attorney. And then when Bailey couldn't show up, Bailey's assistant did. I forgot his name. I apologize. So I knew when, I was there for sentencing and everything.
What did the charges stem from?
The charges were that they were, for Jimmy the Hammer Massaro's murder, that they were surveillancing them, but it was a surveillance and the weather was bad. And it was as long as 2 football fields, that they were at somebody's house in the city, and that they were surveilling them and gathering up all this evidence that they were it had to do with Jimmy the Hammer Massaro's murder, illegal gambling and what have you, and laundering money and this and that. Well, what the cops did was they wrote up the paperwork, because at that time there wasn't computers, and they put the paperwork, they soaked it in tea bags, so it looked older, and then baked it off in the oven real quickly, so the paper looked like they had been surveilling. They had like all this old paperwork, but they made the paperwork look old.
They went to trial. He only got 15 months?
No, they had 25 years to life.
Oh, so they got locked up
in 15 months because Marks, the detective Marks, he couldn't live with himself anymore because it was all lies. And then he came forward and told the truth. So as soon as he came forward and told the truth, they were immediately released.
So you thought your father was going to be in there for 25 years to life?
Yes. Yes. And so did the B team. So they were a little shocked when they got home in 15 months. It was all made up, fabricated evidence. And you know what, Marks came forward. But Lumbard and Mahoney, to me, they got a slap on the wrist. They got 3 years.
Oh, the cops went to prison for doing it.
25 years to life. You fabricate evidence and you get 3 years? Of course, they lost their jobs, but
so they did end up going to prison, though. They
went to they were in like a security, so nobody, because they did a lot of dirty deeds then, and this was the biggest, so they had to keep them protected when they were. I don't believe they came back to Rochester when they were released, but you know who I feel bad for? Their kids, their wives, their families, because they had to live here, what Lumbard and Mahoney did.
Did your father love the city of Rochester?
He loved, yes.
Like
yes.
That was his home.
Yeah, that was why he stayed on the streets and he stayed in the old neighborhood. That's where the joints were located. And again, if you needed money for rent or what, and you went up to him, he'd take it out. And I've heard this story over and over through the past 40 some odd years. He would take the money out of his pocket. He never asked, when you're going to pay it back? Could you pay it back? Who paid it back? Okay. Who didn't? He didn't track you down or have somebody come, you owe Sam X amount of dollars. Never.
Probably gave him brownie points when they paid him back.
Well, but still, he would not, he didn't hold it against anybody either. And, throughout the years, many men have came up to me and, I screwed up and I lost the money for, my rent, and how could I go home and tell my wife, and, your father, don't worry about it. If you got it, give it. If you don't, so I got to be proud of that, right? That gave back to the community and kept an eye out. One on Mano Street, which wasn't heard of at the time. They're in the book also, the Harris family, and they were a black family. And my father greeted them, which he didn't live on Mano Street. He greeted them, I should say African American. I think that's the proper term now. I apologize. And told Mr. Harris, it offered Mr. Harris a job, and he declined. And he goes, if anyone gives you trouble, you, your wife or children, you let me know, because now you're part of our family, the Mano Street family. Because we were all like a family on that street. Nobody locked their doors. You could walk in and out of everybody's house. Who had dinner on the table? Who had, the cold cuts or whatever. That's the way Mano Street was.
And it was
we were just one big family.
It was a safe neighborhood back then. It
was a safe neighborhood, and he wanted Mr. Harris to be part of that safeness. Yes.
So now
I'm still going to take with his children, Patrick and Patrice, and Mr. Harris's.
You're still in touch with them?
With them, yes. That's why I got to send you the book.
Yeah.
So you can read.
Definitely. So I want to show you this picture. Do you remember this picture?
This picture?
Yeah. You
Yes.
remember taking that?
Yes, I was 8, 9 years old. That was one of my birthday parties. That was one of the birthday parties. And this was, I always had, you see what it looks like a little miniature wedding cake?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, those were my birthday cakes, and he always had something special put on it, to my princess, to my little darling. Sweetheart Bakery, this no longer exists now, but Sweetheart Bakery, that's where.
Wow.
And it had to be a rum cake. It had to be a rum cake.
A rum cake?
A rum cake.
I don't know if I ever had a rum cake.
No?
I don't think so.
Are you Italian?
Yeah. My father's side.
Your father's side?
Yeah. When your father remarried, was it that to the woman Georgie girl?
No. No. No.
That was a getaway driver for them, right?
No. Okay, my book is true to fact, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I got as close to dates and this and that. Everything in this book is true. It's not true. She wrote a book to sell a story. She elaborated, she fabricated, and I called her out on it. We just recently made up. I had her in my home. My father took care of her when she was 13. Her and her cousin were at this diner. And my father walked in and he sat in another booth, and these two guys were trying to hit on these young little girls. So they were uncomfortable, of course. So my father walked over and said, yeah, they're kids. What are you doing? So the guy was like, oh, you're tough guy, this and that, called my father outside. He beat the out of both the, can I say that?
Yeah.
Out of both the guys in the parking lot, came back in and told her, if you ever need anything, and he took care of her. And I asked her, were they intimate? She goes, never. When she first moved in her apartment, he made sure that she had groceries. Do you have enough for your rent? And then her brother-in-law, and my father had whoever go and get her and bring her down to him. And he said, what do you want me to do about this?